Kokina semdol kake mofaseda.
Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. Today I'm joined by, and we'll introduce them in a minute, Inner Hell. They are the warlords of, well, we'll call it Wormhole space. And to go through this episode with me, we have Elise Randolph. How are you?
Pretty good. Glad to be here. Very excited.
Me too. And we also have a Wormhole specialist, Izuki. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
In order to do this episode, because Inner Hell is mostly a Russian corporation, we have a translator, and his name is Mist, a Matin. How are you, Mist?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Okay, so let's introduce our guest today. We're very happy to have Korbrey, also known as the streamer Tori Shepard. She is the co-CEO of Inner Hell and also their HR person. How are you, Tori?
Hello, guys. Hello, everyone. Thank you that you invite our corporation to your stream, because I think that Russian-speaking players have so little attention for another countries, and my English is not well, and from time to time I try to speak in English, but I think that Mist will help me with it.
Well, it sounds pretty good to me. And yeah, Mist will help, and we're happy to have you, and definitely we're very excited to cover more Russian gamers inside of EVE Online. Also joining us today from Inner Hell is Mortis and Divalone. How are you, Mortis?
Hello, how are you too? I'm fine.
Good. Nice to meet you. Okay, let's talk about Inner Hell. This is a mysterious group in Wormhole space, but they've actually been around a long time in different forms. Izuki, can you tell us a little bit about Inner Hell, and then we'll talk to them to see what they can tell us that you don't?
Sure. So Inner Hell has, just like you noted, in one form or another, been in Wormhole space for many, many years. I'll let them correct me with exactly when they started. I first knew them as Blood Union. I don't know if there was a group that they called themselves before that, but they first started out as a group that, at least among the English-speaking part of Wormhole space, was primarily known for just dunking capital raiders. I'm sure some of them might have strong feelings, but many years ago, CCP changed the APIs so that like Dotlan and different mapping tools couldn't show you ratting activity in wormholes, but for several years it did. And Inner Hell or Blood Union at the time was notorious for having a fleet logged off in your wormhole, and you went to go start running sites with capital ships, and boom, you were dead. And for many years, and I think many would agree, still to this day, their group is known as being the boogeyman of wormhole space. There was a time period where you'd be running sites and you just sit there just waiting to see if a bunch of ships were suddenly going to show up and kill you, and it happened with extreme frequency. And they've evolved over the years, and picked some fights with a lot of the other different wormhole groups. But anyone who's been in wormhole space for any period of time certainly knows who they are.
Even outside of Wormhole space, yeah. And then they transformed into.
If someone's correcting me in chat, so I know I knew them first as Blood Union, and then they were Quantum Explosion. It sounds like maybe they were also Quantum Explosion before they were Blood Union. when Inner Hell was formed, and is the most recent iteration of their Wormhole group, who I think is probably more well known even outside of Wormhole space, because they've also become well known for taking down super carriers and nullsec. They can form very impressive fleets. They are very good at what they do, and if your capital's tackled by them, you may want to seriously consider if it's worth trying to save it.
And then their last form is Inner Hell. Correct?
Yes, that's the current group that we have here is Inner Hell. I don't think they're in an alliance right now, and there's a lot of different groups. I'll admit, from the outside, it can be a little difficult to tell what is a different Russian group that simply flies with Inner Hell all the time, and what are actually possibly alts. Other groups that they're known to fly with frequently, such as Wormhole Outlaws, Infernal Gas Meat. Those are excuse me. Those are the big two, and but there's a lot of Russian wormhole corporations, and some of them you'll see flying right alongside them in many of their operations. And like I said, from the outside, I don't always know if was always the plan or them asking each other for help. Deep Space Tomatoes is another example.
Mm-hmm. But these guys are some of the best Wormhole PvPers and have been for a long time. So that's how we see you from the outside, Tori and Mortis. What can you tell us about who you are in Inner Hell?
Thank you, exactly. You are right, but you have a small mistake, because people who now as a part of the Inner Hell Corporation is the members who was in the Quantum Explosion Corporation, and after disband Quantum Explosion, we made a new corporation and name it Inner Hell. Oh, Kitty.
We have a cat's tail waving. So for those of us who cannot see,
nice, I love cats. So we have an old story of our corporation, because, as Exoki right said, because we have a good small collective of people, Russian-speaking people, that lived in Wormhole space, C6. And C5 Wormhole space, and we rotten from maybe 1 or 2 years, and after that we start to make some PvP. In that time, if you can't find a good capital battles in nullsec or lowsec, only in Wormhole space you can make to find a target with carriers, with dreadnoughts, and try to make a good fight with that guys. And it was the perfect time for PvP by capital ship with small group of people, because in that time Quantum Explosion had about maybe 10 active people, real players. And I think that it was a perfect time for PvP, because you have a small group of people, you lived in Wormhole space without signals, without a lot of blobs of super capital ship, and you can get a good roaming in Wormhole space, rolling your static wormhole to the C5 or maybe C6, C4 and all the system, and try to get a good fight with another small group of people that can use and capital ship and H3 cruisers and something like that, without any blobs that we can find whatever you want in nullsec.
So that's really interesting. For the longest time, it's funny to think about now, but for the longest time, you're saying like it was hard to find just single capital ships just in nullsec ratting and stuff because it was kind of pointless for them to do it.
I
But
don't
it
know
is-
that. I agree with you, but I think that you can find a small group and maybe one dreadnought or maybe two, and in Wormhole space you can find about 10 Rattian capitals in one anomaly, and it was a very terrible fight for attackers because sleepers is a very dreadful NPC for players, and after that you need to fight between NPC in one of the most terrible in New Eden and with another capital ship. It was a good challenge for good staff and good skilled group of people.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, that's something that if for a lot of like listeners, they don't really do much in Wormholes. That's definitely something that they haven't considered is, hey, I have to fight this giant group and also these sleepers that are trying to kill me at the same time.
Before the Citadel expansion, high class anomaly ratting was very frequently done by mid-sized capital fleets. Before that, they changed it. There were a lot of corporations in Eve that would run sites with multiple triage carriers. You know, the faxes didn't exist, as well as many dreadnoughts. And this was some of the I think some of the content that the Inner Hell was known for, especially dunking on, is the problem is these fleets might sound like they're dangerous, but high angles didn't exist, and these were ships built for ratting, so their tanks were also usually only good enough to tank the site, and so with the right focused manpower, they would just crumple under fleets. I think watching like 5 to 10 capitals die all in one sitting to Inner Hell or Quantum Explosion or Blood Union was a weekly occasion back then.
What about you, Mortis? Do you have any comments on the history of Inner Hell that we should know?
I hadn't been in Inner Hell when they were still Quantum Explosions, so I can't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
I know history just on forum posts and speaking of other guys who were there.
Right. Well, let's ask you both the next question of why you prefer Wormholes instead of taking all the expertise that you have and participating in known space.
Mortis?
It's everyone. You have a random chance of what you will see on the other side of Wormhole. You don't know what you will find: empty system or system filled with capital writing ships, or maybe enemy fleet who want to fight. And of course, Wormholes don't have local, so it's best place of New Eden for me and my corp mates and many other guys like Exukis Corps, like Hard Knocks and other Wormhole corporations who live there.
Well, for 6 weeks, known space didn't have local.
Yes,
that was called
right.
Blackout.
Those were the days.
It was amazing.
So you,
For us, but not for our target.
yeah, for you guys, it was amazing. We won't talk about that now. We'll maybe talk about that a little bit later. But you're the Bomber FC, is that right, Mortis?
Yes, I have my own bomber squad, and many of our guys are trained to bomb using stealth bombers. But due to current meta, I don't find good targets to bomb, because everyone is using heavy assault cruisers like Moonins or Eagles, and they are very hard to bomb at first, and in second, I don't know when and where timers where we can be, where I can bring my fleet, so I hadn't bombed much.
Right. Okay, so one of the reasons we're very interested in Inner Hell recently, I was always interested in them way back when they were Blood Union. I just heard about them, and they were, again, the boogeyman of Wormhole space. And it was interesting to have these, the scary entity that you wouldn't really communicate with because they were talking in Russian, if they even talked at all. But also as Quantum Explosion, I remember they did an enormous amount of consolidation of C6 wormholes. They were essentially dominating C6 wormholes. You couldn't really be in those wormholes unless you had permission from them or were renting from their partners, either Hard Knocks or Laserhawks. I don't know how it worked. Maybe we can find out about it. But recently, Inner Hell has, again, for the third time, come onto our radar as someone who's terrifying wormholers themselves because they're doing a lot of evictions. Some of the evictions that we've seen, and you can correct the record, is Stranger Danger, who was familiar to us because they were one of our favorite corporations of 2017. And they got evicted, and there was also, I think it was Spatial Instability had a Keepstar that was destroyed. And now we have Mouth Trumpet Cavalry and even Bomber's Bar. And those, I think, were both in C2s, if I'm not mistaken.
And a lot of another collectives.
And who else?
And a lot of another collectives.
Oh, I don't know who that is. So there's a lot of evictions going on. Is there something that you were trying to do, or what's happening here?
I can tell you a good story about it. Because...
I love the way you said that.
So we have a good stories with a lot of wormhole space collectives. And you're right, we have a good days for in our history that when our corporation dominates in C6 system. It was a good time. We tried to get a good alliance that can help each other with eviction, or maybe protect from eviction from another collective. And after about 1 year such game, we decide that we have no targets in wormhole space, because we killed every good collective that can make PvP activity in that time, and all our last enemies was a part of our alliance that named W Space Citizen. I remember it. And after that we drop this activity. We have a small problem with CCP, and some of our account was banned and for arc sharing, because it is a good practice in last day for small PvP collective in wormhole space. And after that, we lost a lot of main people who was a big part of the Quantum Explosion Corporation. And after that, we tried to make something new. After that, CCP nerf capital rating in C5 and C6 anomaly, and a lot of people lost W space and go to the nullsec and another space. And after that, we have no targets in wormhole space. And such collective like Mighty Beans, Cavalry, and other collectives that was evicted by Inner Hell in the last 2 years. It was last of old collectives that lived in wormhole space with us for a long time, and we saw that from time to time all of that groups try to away from W space. They start in unanchoring their Fortizar, their Keepstar, and we go to try to find find the system and try to kill all these and we finished with them. Sorry for my English, because
English
I
is
have no
fantastic.
practice.
No.
Really.
No, it's fantastic, and I love the way you say things. It's very memorable. Exuki, can you tell us a bit more? Like, I may have not given the complete story on what's going on lately. You want to fill in here?
Sure. So I think the important thing to really kind of just take away and know about eviction when we talk about an eviction in Wormhole space is there's no asset safety. So when a corporation loses their home system, what we're really talking about is everything that they hadn't logged off in a ship is dropping as loot. So Wormhole space evictions are generally motivated by one of a couple of things. Well, big one at least, and I'll let Inner House say whether or not they actually care about the loot, because I frequently hear that they don't. Some of these targets, they blow up, and we're talking about hundreds of billions of ISK worth of loot falls out. So there's a real incentive to hit corporations for that purpose. It certainly blows a much bigger hit to a corporation or an alliance than losing some of their SOV might. We might have lost the space, but we didn't lose the assets in it. But in Wormhole space, you're losing both. I mean, we don't have we don't have sovereignty, but most corporations would say, I own this system, I live here. There are groups that own many Wormhole systems. And so when we're talking about evictions, we're talking about a fleet coming in, kicking over your sandcastle, and actually taking all of your stuff. Sometimes they blow it all up. Sometimes they bring it all out as loot to help fund the next one. But evictions, sometimes they aren't always really fun. they can be they can be a little challenging, but they are almost always lucrative.
And also, it happens a lot faster than you might suspect, because all the timers go a little bit faster in a Wormhole space compared to either high sec, low sec, or null sec. So it's like losing all of your stuff in like a week.
Wormhole space has always had shorter timers. So previously, if you had everything lined up, we're talking about in and out in 72 hours. You can blink and your wormhole is completely burned down, depending on how it was. Yeah. So like the picture that we have up here. Every one of those green dots represents a character that had yellow. Every one of those green yellow boxes is a character's hangar that had assets inside of that Keepstar. So I don't know how many cans is there, probably a couple hundred. It's always kind of funny when something this big blows up, because what you'll also notice is you can see a lot of blue dots and a lot of orange dots. And so what kind of happens in some of this is the structure blows up, and even once the fight might have ended, you've got multiple fleets kind of warping all over the corpse of this structure, trying to find loot. Sometimes they're just grabbing ships and coming back to the fight that may be still going on, even though the structure is dead. I know, like back in 2018, the eviction of Pos Party was notorious for this. You had two fleets duking it out, and when the main structure blew up, you had hundreds of cans. Both sides were just warping pods down to different hangar containers, trying to find a ship to rejoin their fleet, and the fight went on for almost 2 hours.
Now, what we were seeing there, for those that can't see, is the destruction of a Keepstar in Wormhole space produced a lot of hangars in the form of these cargo containers that float in space in a big circle around the wreckage of the space station that was destroyed. And that's what what Exuki was referring to. Okay.
So what is it that that Inner Hell are doing? Like, so when you're not evicting people and taking all their stuff and making it your own, or you're not, doing Wormhole, do you guys do NPCing?
Мисс, помоги с переводом, пожалуйста.
Да. Чем вы занимаетесь, когда не выселяете кого-то, не забираете их лут и так далее? Вы занимаетесь PvE или еще чем-нибудь?
Okay, I understand. So guys, I need to talk you about our corporation. All stuff that we can loot in our ops, like eviction, we go to the Corp asset. And all our loss in battle, we can... Мист, как будет...
Cover.
Recover, yes, recover. Спасибо. We will recover for our people from this sum of ISK, because all our people do not get any part of the looting. All of them go to the corp asset, and if people lose their own ship, their own pods, we can give him new pods and new implants and new ships for free. And we try to make only PvP content, because our people don't writing, don't maybe you use Sancha and maybe Abyss anomaly for getting an ISK, because all our activities was... Короче, мисс, помоги мне, пожалуйста, с переводом, что все наше направление направлено исключительно на ПВП, а все остальное ребята делают самостоятельно в других корпорациях и альянсах.
So, long story short, the main thing is PvP. They're doing only PvP. If some guys want to do PvE or some other stuff, they are generally doing it in other corporations outside of the alliance.
For that, we made an alliance that named Infernal Godsmeet. Our rating corporation is the part of this alliance, and they don't get a good standing with Inner Hell main corporation, because people only rating and people only make a PvP.
Mortis, what about your view?
Yes, like Tori already said, we have our own corporate ship replacement program. So every coin, every little piece of something, for example, metal scrap or Velspar or torpedo, everything what we loot from evictions, it goes to corporation wallet, and no one of members of corporation don't get any ISK from there, because we have a little rule: when someone comes into a corporation, he buys his first ship, Loki or Ikitursa or what he want, and after this all his losses will be covered by corporation wallet. So he don't need to rat, he don't need even undock for any other action except from PvP if he want to play.
That's a really cool system, the way it works, right? You buy your first ship, and then after that you just PvP. And that's it. Like, that's all you have to do in EVE is PvP. I think it keeps people, it keeps the same type of people around, which is really cool. So you guys have, if you've got like a 50-man corporation, then 45 of those people will come out to fight on any given day. That's really cool. Also, like, it's interesting because some of the most storied and like prolific PvP alliances from EVE's history do it very similarly. Like the very early days of Mercenary Coalition, and then they had that same system going down where they just share everything, and you don't have to worry about ratting or earning ISK.
I went to the, sorry, I had to jump in to show that I knew something, and I spoke about evolution. Do you remember the evolution? Essentially, everything belongs to the corporation, nothing belongs to you, but you have access to everything you need.
Yeah, exactly.
Evolution was the alliance that was one of the founders of Band of Brothers early on and is now in NC. But yeah, that's interesting. And, people complain that you can't make a living PvPing, so you have to do this PvE stuff, but that's not entirely true, is it?
We try to give more opportunity for PvP content and people need only buy Plex for their account. And a lot of people use Plex and don't think about anything else without PvP.
No distractions. Mortis, tell us your one exception.
Okay. In our rule of SRP is only one exception. If you die like retard in fleet, in combat or somewhere else, your loss will be covered only using your own wallet. So corporation don't cover your stupid losses like warp into anomaly or warp into grid where it's already burned Sino in Delph or in Esoteria or somewhere else. So if you made override, but you did just because it was not your fault, it was a fault of your FC, or it was just overwhelming alpha, so you just couldn't be healed using your logis, and you'll be covered.
So if you die in a dumb way, it's on you. All other deaths will reimburse you and get you back on your feet.
And that whole system just reinforces like the notion like, hey, we want PvPers. Also, you have to be pretty good. Like it's just a really good way to keep your alliance or your group being very focused on PvP.
It's a lot easier to also maintain a system like that when Inner Hell is very good at what they do and they don't actually lose that much most of the time. And then, the payouts from a lot of their operations, I'm sure, are more than enough to cover what little bits they do lose. If you're thinking out there, that's a cool system, I'm going to go do that too. Just remember that if you lose a lot, it's a lot harder to keep up such a closed loop system. I know there's no way my corp could ever do that because we feed way too often.
You have to be really good at EVE Online combat in order to do it that way. That's hilarious. And one other thing about that, not only do you have to be good and not sustain a bunch of losses, but there's also some groups do this similar in nullsec where they say, hey, as long as you're in the right ship, then you get reimbursed. But you have to prove that you were in the right ship with the right fit in order to get reimbursed. Isn't that how it usually works, Elise?
Yes, of course, you should be in right ship, in right fit, using right your position in fleet and other stuff. For example, if FC command refit in travel mode, fit covert subsystem and interdiction subsystem to evade a fight or run away from Delph, if you die after this command, not in travel mode, not with the covert and interdiction subsystem, this will not be SRP'd.
Right. Thanks, Mortis. And then at least like for nullsec groups, the way that they do it, does it create some pressure to not fly just anything you want? And here's why I ask, because one of the things that I've run into in nullsec is that you have situations where you don't have the right ship for the fleet that's going out. So you have to think, do I want to go out and possibly die in the wrong ship, not be able to get it SRP'd, and also be ridiculed? Or do I just get in on this fleet? Like, those are some of the thinking that happens with the frontline men for nullsec.
So for the longest time in nullsec, or not the longest time, but for the very early days in nullsec, people just flew what they wanted to fly, and then they didn't matter. Like I think the best example of this is a pilot by the name of Baltec. He used to be in Goonswarm. He took a Megathron to every single fleet, no matter what it called for. It could be Drakes, he'd take a Megathron. But alliances kind of shied away from this, and they do it through SRP, ship replacement programs, where if you have to be flying the right ship in order to get it replaced. Most alliances don't have the stipulations that you can't have made a mistake, because I think most nullsec alliances they just wouldn't have any people.
They make a lot of mistakes.
But they also do interesting things like, hey, if you fly logistics, it's reimbursed 140%, because we need people flying logistics. Or if they're short on recon pilots, they say, hey, your recon ship will be reimbursed 150%. So you actually make money if you die. So that's how it usually works in nullsec. But it can be, maybe for like tighter groups, it can be like SRP only for non-mistakes made. But
did you guys see that butterfly that was flying around my head there? That was my son's hand, and he was trying to distract me. And it worked. Okay. We were talking about wormhole evictions, and what was the latest eviction that happened? Was it Mouth Trumpet Cavalry? Did that just happen?
Yes.
How did that go? Was it a success?
It was successful. All our targets were done, what we wanted from this eviction, but sorry, I can't say literally nothing about this eviction, because I was very busy in real life and hadn't been in game for a long time.
I can speak about it, but good information, because we go to the system and try to get a really good fight, because we know that these guys have a lot of people, and the main problem for us for eviction with another Wormhole corporation is another prime time, because every time we have not a good timers for our time zone, and we need plan for attacking another system for a long time, and a lot of time we spent not for preparing for ship or maybe some stuff for eviction, and a lot of time was spent to find a good timer on Citadel. And every time CCP changes the mechanics of timer of the Citadel siege, and we can't find a good target for our prime time. The cavalry was one of the group with similar prime time for our time zone. That's why we go to this system and try to get a lot of stuff from their Citadel, because we know that people lived in this system for a long time, and we hope that a lot of people go away from game and all their stuff was dropped in space after blowing of their Citadel. And guys asking for help, and a lot of people try to help them. And we have a fantastic battle with Capital Fleet, because we try to stand our own Citadel, class Astrachos, for the system for preparing for battle. And guys undock a lot of capital ship, I think about 15. And they warp into our Citadel that was entering, and blow up it, and we don't want what we need to do, because we have an equal fleet, but we have no capital ship, and our enemies was a good They have a time, they have good stuff in this system, they have a lot of capital ship and fax and carriers and dreadnoughts and subcapital and capital ships. And they have a vindicator that was very difficult for our armor slowly fleet attack this large group of capital ship. But when we starting this eviction and starting this battle, we use MGD destroyers and jump away all of subcapital enemy ships and kill them. And after that, we can kill all the capital ship without any problem, because we have a good quality and very skillful people with squad of equitors, and the Jugoslavian ship have a very fantastic DPS, and it was a wonderful ship for small group of Wormhole people that want to kill a big target like a capital ship or maybe super capital ship in nullsec. And we have a lot of equitors, and that's why we have a good DPS for destroy all the enemy capital ship. And after that, guys don't want to attempt any what's the English for сопротивление?
Resistance.
So after that battles, our enemies has no any resistance, and we kill all the citadel and kill a lot of capital and subcapital ships that drop from this system, from this citadel, and we have a very fantastic looting for this collective. And I don't think that it was terrible and hard. We have only one battle. It was about 1 hour, I think. And after that, we can get a looting for 500 billion ISK, and we killed staff for equal sum.
That's some pretty good ISK per hour. That's actually fascinating the way you guys do fights like that. And I know Xuki had a question about how. I'll let Xuki ask.
Yeah, so I was just curious, so we've had a lot of changes over the last couple of months. I was curious how the changes to structure timers, in that there's no day anymore, may have changed or not changed the way that you approach your eviction targets, since I don't know if that opened up targets that you wouldn't have had before, now that you can make sure it's on the weekend, and even if they're not timers for you, you could try to make that. And I'm also curious, I guess, so a second question, how did changes to the command destroyers alter your eviction fleets? I know previous to the change, you guys used a lot of command destroyers and Ikiturses, and your fleet was focused on evading the enemy. I don't know if you would say it's still the same, or if you've changed up how you try to fight. But if you feel like sharing, I'm curious to know how Team Talos is disrupting everything that you guys do. Maybe that was too long a question.
Окей, мисс, переведи вкратце, потому что что-то я поняла, что-то нет.
I'm sorry, but can you repeat the first part, please?
All right, sure. So I'll trim it down. How did the Citadel timer changes impact your Corp?
Ну, собственно, как изменения
I understand. I see. Okay. Mortis, maybe you?
Okay. So the timer changed. We were worrying that it will hardly beat our style of evictions, but after release, we've seen that they changed them a little in Wormhole space. So the CCP just added one more night for whole control and camping of system. So if before patch it was 3 days to fully evict one system, if their citadels are set in one time, but after the patch it takes 4 days in best как там будет в лучшем случае.
In best case,
Best way.
In best case, it takes 4 days.
So I imagine, do you like that change? It takes longer, but now there's no set.
From one side, this change is good because we can, even if timer is set to, for example, 4 hours before 4 hours of morning, you don't need to not sleep before work. If timer is set on, for example, Thursday, you can move it to Saturday or Sunday and form all of your powers, all of your guys who can be in fleet, who can be online in this time, and don't think about work or other real stuff. But from other side, it's still one more night for controlling the system, and on third, more chance for defending side that they can roll into this system and bring other guys who will help them.
This is funny. Somebody's asking if you're recruiting in chat.
Yes, we are recruiting.
I think that's Andres.
Andres already in our corporation. Andres, hello, my friend. And, he already in our corporation, and he is one of the best cyber pilot in our corporation. Saber, if
I like cyber.
Correctly, cyber. Okay,
that's good.
Where do
we recruiting? But I think you should learn Russian because we have a small part of people who speak in English. And not all our fleet commander have a good practice in that language.
I was going to ask, where do most of your members come from, like before they joined? Is it groups like Red Alliance and Solar Fleet and XDeath, or completely different ones?
Different. Not even from this alliance. Because in Russia we have similar politics from for Russian-speaking alliance, because they hate us and we hate them, and they don't want to join our fleet. Because we have a similar prime time, and we try to kill them, and after that they don't want to speak with us in any way.
So you're like their rivals. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. That makes sense too, because you're the ones just killing them over and over again.
So another person in chat there is Pandoralica from the Initiative. He's an FC, does bombers a lot. You might know him from that. But you also have probably heard of him as somebody that invaded Rage system and took out Hard Knocks at the time. And he wanted to know, all the loot, do you take it to the market and sell it, or does it get stored in some structure in Wormhole space? And I wonder why he's asking.
Мист, помоги с переводом с правильным.
Я тоже не совсем понял.
В чате человек по имени Пандралика, известный флитком, водит бобров, он в свое время захватывал стейджинг Hard Knocks. Он спрашивает, что именно вы делаете с лутом? Вы его сразу продаете или вы его где-то складируете?
I can answer this question. If dropped any ships, if they are tier 2 or tier 3, we loot them. If it is tier 1 ships like dreadnoughts or carriers or, for example, executors, we kill them because they take too much time to move them from system to sell. Any other wood we move into our citadel and then haul it to Hisek. Part of them goes to Jita and is selling, and part of them is going to our corporate hangar where it will be before we will need this stuff.
Right. So that was a little bit of a joke because Pandoralica went into Wormhole space, and that was the first time we saw a large nullsec group go into Wormhole space and evict a Wormhole group. But what did you actually feel about that when it happened?
Мист, про какое именно выселение он говорит? Вот,
Он про выселение хардноксов, когда панда вторгся к ним в ВХ, все снес и захватил ее. Ну, типа,
окей.
как вы по этому поводу себя чувствуете?
I see. Guys, we have not a good staging with Hard Knocks and their allies because we have bad stuff practice with history, because when in Quantum Explosion was bad times, these guys try to backstab us and kill our own Keepstar in our own C6. And after that, we have a very bad staging with this corporation. But we, like other group of Wormholes people, think that we can't do anything if a lot of free full fleet of Imperium will come to any our system. We can do anything, and if such a situation will be with our own corporation, I think it was very sad, but it is just a game, and if you lose all your loots, all your ship, it's a good time to start from zero. And I don't think that it is bad or is good. It's just a game. That's
Mortis, do you have anything to add?
I can say just my own opinion. From one side, it was good for us that someone is killing Hard Knocks, because we don't like them. They were killing us, we were killing them, and we have bad standing. But from other side, they were evicting by NuSec Alliance. And in my opinion, Wormhole is for wormholers and NuSec is for NuSec guys. And that's why I hadn't tried even to ping. So let's help Hard Knocks. They're evicting by guys from NuSec.
Well, but lately there have been groups, and I don't know if they're considered wormholers, that come out and hunt nullsec often. Do you guys do that? Do you come out of wormholes and hunt in known space?
yes, of course, every day.
Yeah, they're dunking all the super carriers.
Yes, we now we lived in wormhole systems that have two static wormhole, one to the C5 system and another to the null. It is the best way for get a free PvP every day, whatever you want, and it is good practice for us. We range roll our static wormhole to the nullsec, and every time we go to the another region and try to get a good target, maybe titans, maybe super carriers, maybe rorquals, maybe KTA, or Roman fleet or something like that.
But something, yeah.
That's actually pretty funny. I know for the winter holiday, CCP gave out filaments that would take people like small gangs to a random nullsec system, and the people that live in the known space, they use it all. They love it. They think it's the best thing. And I know wormholers were laughing like, hey, that's what it's like living with a static nullsec. We get that every day. We just roll it and get to a new system. It's great.
Well, here's the last question. What would you ask for CCP for wormhole space? Because I think it's related to this. We'll start with Mortis.
We want from CCP second capital static in C6, especially if it will be in if it will lead into nullsec. So we will be able to drop dreads, roll it with the capital ship, and not needed to use 5 or 6 accounts just to roll wormhole.
Right.
May I ask something?
What would you ask?
You ask about something from CCP. I think that wormhole space need any changes. It may be bad changes, it may be good changes, but it's needed because there is no happens here because only PvP corporation can go to evict each other or maybe make a PvP content, but in W space there is no any content for group of people because rating is not what's the English for выгодно?
Profitable.
Profitable, oh, that's right. No, because CCP nerf last rating by super or by capital ship with capital reinforcement by sleepers, and all of that, all these changes in finally was. Скажи-ка, пожалуйста, причина, по которой люди ушли из Wormhole.
The reason why people left wormholes.
So, and now we have no any content in W space, and we need any changes. So with Ratin, with Triglavian, with any other race, but Wormhole space will need to change in any way.
Maybe we should stop. Maybe if we should just stop evicting all the wormhole corps and put out little homeless shelters for them, so people will come.
Oh no!
Like stray cats.
I think that.
Говори.
Нет, Mortis, говори ты.
We are not evicting those guys who bring content in wormhole space. We are evicting those of them who are just writing and who dog scared when see something new on Discon or new spawn signature. They don't bring anything new in wormhole space and don't bring any content, so they are not needed.
Out with them. You're going to sweep them out. Okay, last question. Are you, Tori, are you wearing a Minmatar outfit? Or what do you have on there?
Мист, помоги с переводом.
У тебя минматарская подвеска.
Guys, we played and using in our fights only Minmatar ship. We loved Lokis, and after that, in my stream from time to time, I made some cosplay for Minmatar or Triglavian. That's why I use such jewelry, yes, in English.
Jewelry, yeah.
And something like that.
It's a Triglavian helmet, and she's wearing Minmatar jewelry.
Yes, that's right. Because we use only ships of this Minmatar and Triglavian.
So it's not just role playing in the game. You're actually cosplaying in real life.
It's not my hobby because it's needed only for.
Well, we appreciate you dressing up today. Okay.
Thank you.
It's been very nice to talk to Inner Hell today. If we could keep you around for just a minute, we're going to just now talk about some news for the next 5 to 10 minutes, just to go through what happened this week. And I'll ask if Elise could help me with that.
So earlier this week, Frederick von Hull, he's been having a great 2020 so far. He has killed yet another Alliance tournament ship. He was with Lucy Liu at the time. And that's they got von Holtz, that AT ship. Also, it was an imp, by the way. And they earlier this year they also got a Revenant. So it's been a pretty profitable or fortuitous week for the von Hull boys.
Let me actually. Sorry, we'll interrupt the news. And I want to say goodbye to Tori. She has to take off. So thanks very much, Tori, for spending some time with Talking in Stations.
Thank you, guys, for your... Мист, скажи, пожалуйста, спасибо большое за приглашение. Это очень важно, что англоязычные каналы освещают деятельность русскоязычных альянсов и корпораций.
Mm-hmm. So, Tori, thanks you all for inviting her. It's extremely important to share some light on Russian activities since, well, there's not enough information about them.
Absolutely agree. And we have some translators like Mist, and we had another translator here earlier. So we are going to be doing a lot more of this to bring all the activity that Russian gamers and EVE do to the American and European audiences.
Thank you. I think it will be very, very impressive.
And one other thing, you actually stream on YouTube, right?
And
you
YouTube
have some
and
videos.
Twitch, of course.
And we'll put your channel in our show notes so that people can find you if they want to.
It mean?
Yeah, we'll put your link to your channel on our show.
I see.
Great. And thank you very much, Mortis, for coming around. I'm going to give you a chance to say goodbye too, if you can stick around, but if you have any last comments. Mortis. Oh, I think he may have stepped away because he knew we were going to news. So, Tori, we'll say goodbye to you. And if you could leave the camera on, that'd be great. If you can't, we understand. And let's now go back to news.
Guys,
and we just talked about.
Go. So,
okay.
Bye-bye. And
bye-bye. All right,
thanks.
Thank
you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, and Elise, let's go back to news now. So yeah, we were talking about the imp that died and the rag that died. It was actually streamed, I believe. Lucy Liu was streaming their attempts at getting the imp, so I'm sure you can find the video of that. And I mean, how many more obstacles do these guys need to put on themselves? They have to find like the rarest ship, they have to kill it, and they have to then stream it now. These guys are they're just going nuts.
Lucy Liu, another Russian player. These guys are so good at the game. And we are probably going to get an interview with him sometime in the next few weeks. So look for that too.
Invite me, please.
So another thing about Lucy Liu, by the way, as long as we're on that, he's also a real dominator inside of Triglivian space, right, in the PvP arena. Yeah, when there are a few, like, I don't want to call them like power players, but there are a few like pretty big names if you do the Proving Grounds and the Triglivian sites, which is like the optional fourth stage where you can PvP and get extra loot. There are a few people that do it really well. I know Lucy Liu is one of those people. Torvald is a Twitch streamer, and he also makes YouTube content. He's one of those too. He actually has some very fascinating stuff if you're interested about the Proving Grounds.
I'll throw a link up to his channel as well. It's quite interesting. And then like Sniper Bros 15, he's like one of the other big names that you'll run into. I'd probably say there's a dozen names that you'll run into in the proving grounds. So that community is pretty tight. And yeah, Lucy was one of the first like big names there.
I'll also just briefly mention while we're, praising him for his PvP prowess. He's actually also known for dominating someone in Wormhole space occasionally. I'm not always sure if he's baiting on purpose or just is very ready, but he farms up a lot of the ISK he uses to fund all of this in Wormhole space, and sometimes he's set himself up so that people come to try to kill him while he's ratting, and he just demolishes the fleets that come in after him. I don't have a good Z kill here ready. We actually killed his ratting vehement a couple months ago. I forget which month it was. But that was one of the few times that he actually lost. But I mean, we fed like the teens of billions of Visk. I think we fed over 30 sabers just keeping his capitals on field while we kept trying to reship. But much in the same way he does in K-Space, where he takes down much larger groups with just a couple very well put together smaller fleets. He does the same thing in Wormhole space, using Vindicators, Faxes, and Dreads to just destroy people that don't recognize his name, or they get tunnel vision, they see some ratting capitals, they throw themselves at it, and next thing you know, the ratting capitals are still there and their fleet's all in pods.
Wild. Hey, Mortis, do you know Lucy Liu?
I know about him, but I don't know him well.
Okay, just wondering if it was a small community or if it's too big to know everybody. Okay, so what's going on with War of the Dead? This is something happening in the north.
Yeah, it's still going on right now. There's actually a big CTA formed on the attacker side, I believe, this morning in Tino to take out an iHub and some other infrastructure in the area. In the system of G06-8, kind of a key system, it looks like about 700 people just took down an Anzablex jump gate. So I imagine they're doing some other stuff in that area with the force that large. I was talking to Sword Dragon earlier today, and he was saying that it's not going too poorly for his side either. He also had a big CTA called and to defend some timers, and he got almost 800 people. So not nearly the pushover that maybe people thought they would. Still quite strong. And then news broke earlier this that the Army of Mangoes Alliance officially set blue standings with Rager Regiment, which is a Chinese group that works with Dead Coalition and Sword Dragon in Darkness. And the Army of Mangoes were the Chinese group that came over from Serenity that ended up aligning themselves with Legacy. And then Test Alliance of Legacy went over and started attacking Sword Dragon. So it's just a mess. It's just a standings mess up.
Yeah, well, Ranger Regiment is in Dead Coalition, right?
Yes.
They're an alliance. They're an alliance in that coalition. Yeah, okay. And they're
one of the bigger alliances there by now. So it's like Darkness, Ranger Regiment, and Siberian Squad, and a few others that are in there. And not yesterday, but the day before, on Friday, there was a pretty big fight in Declan that was more or less about each. It looked like both sides kind of lost about 50 billion ISK each or so. It was in U.S. time zone, though, so a little bit should have been an advantage on the PanFam side.
Well, and apparently something's going on right now. At the very time of this recording, NCPL are, I think, doing a number on Tino.
Yeah, they formed up for a big timer, an iHub timer in G06. And if you look at the kill boards, like that area just had an Enzlux jump gate that died with 700 people involved on it or so. So there's a big attacking force in Tenal right now. So we'll see what ends up happening as they stand down. I imagine they're just going to reinforce a bunch of systems, like oodles of systems. I think NC have like a Save the Alliance that are planned as well. So a big morale push over here, which is generally how it goes. You just want to get, when you have all your people around anyways, might as well get something out of it. So Tenal is going to have quite a few timers, I believe.
Right. So we'll keep our eye on that. Anything else?
I'm sure other cool stuff has happened, but there's just been lots of, it seems like a lot of standoff fights, and then a lot of just like heated moment fights that happen over and over. Trigger Happy is kind of sort of almost getting involved a little bit. Like every once in a while you see them with like 30 or 40 people in a roaming gang that showed up to a big like 400 on 400 fight. So it should be interesting to see how that plays out, if they're going to try and stay impartial or if they're going to show up with more and more. I imagine they're going to try and stay impartial. It's just like small groups. But
well, they just had a leadership change, right?
Yeah, they did. We don't really know, or I personally don't know all that much about it.
Well, we know only that what's public, and that is Kendar is stepping back from activity in the game, and so he's given the reins to a different person. I had the name. I think it starts with an A. It's like Artemis or something. I'll go look. And so the leadership has changed, but Kendar again was the guiding spirit, the guy that brought it together, found it kind of attracted people to it. So it'll be interesting to see how it can be held together.
Yeah, they've got a really deep amount of talent, like leadership talent, FC talent, like content enablers in that alliance. So I'm sure they'll be totally fine.
Okay, good. What's Unspoken up to here? The big battle on Friday in USTZ, skirmish of Astra House, timer with a side split of, it's Dead Coalition and PL again. Oh, and Conifers. We've been hearing about them. United Federation of Conifers lately. Maybe it was the midweek show that talked about them. All right. Well, that looks like it for me. Do you have anything else, Elise?
No, I've been kind of keeping an eye on some little fights that have been sprouting up over Empire Space a little, but nothing too big to talk about now. Hopefully next week or the week after, we might have the makings of it. An interesting story out that you might not have heard before. Just like little groups in high sec, warring against one another. I always find those to be fascinating. I know there's not like big, huge money fights. There's not like trillions of ISK going down, but I always like it when like groups that you haven't heard of start fighting and they become like fascinating fights.
Yeah, I'm in it for the stories. That's why I liked when Tori said, "We have a story about that." I just love that phrase. Like I want to use that forever now.
This is probably one of my favorite like interviews that we've ever had, if I'm being frank. Like I know I'm not supposed to pick favorites, but this might have been one of my favorites. I just loved everything about Inner Hell. I loved how just how they approach the game. They're like, "Oh, we don't care if we lose everything. It's okay. We don't pick targets based on like grudges. We just look for ones that have the same timers as us." And then just like just everything about it. I absolutely love the fight breakdown.
All right, Exuki, last thoughts?
Well, I think that was a really fun episode. It was really interesting to hear about, a little bit of the mindset and the things that they look for and that they're out doing. I'm really interested to also see how the next couple of months play out too, with the big wormhole patch right around the corner. We're going to see what that's going to shake up, and whether or not they see it. They were begging us in Discord, and I know they mentioned it on comms. They're just like, the Inner Hell would really, really like it if they could have a class 6 with a static null sec. So I'll warn you guys though, if they actually get that, then you're gonna feel that. That will be felt in null sec.
You will feel that. Inner Hell is coming for you.
I mean, it won't just be Interhell. There'll be tons of other groups too. But right now, there is nowhere in Wormhole space that has a static connection to null that will allow capital ships to go through. If that was to exist in a C6, I think that would be a shakeup, to say the least.
All right. Well, okay, we'll leave it there then. And I want to thank Mortis for coming. Do you have any last thoughts, Mortis, before we go?
Sorry, what? I don't understood you.
Oh, do you have any last words?
Я переведу.
Да, я понял, да. I can only say thank you for inviting here and say, guys, go to Wormholes. They are very funny, and maybe we will not evict you.
That's reassuring.
That's encouraging. Yeah. All right, Mortis from Interhell, thank you very much. And Mist, thank you very much for hanging around and making sure that we could communicate well. I really appreciate your help.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. The thing is, I am a linguistic student, so this show was basically a free opportunity for me to practice my skills.
You did great. Really appreciate it. We'll have you back.
Thanks.
All right, and Elise and Izuki, thanks guys for showing up today.
Thanks for having me.
A pleasure as always.
Always a pleasure. I'm going to put you on the spot, Izuki. Wormhole podcast. When's it coming back? It's not just me. It's like the audience.
We'll say soon. I have some plans for the first couple of episodes drafted up, and I should have a little more free time this quarter, and we'll see what we can do later this month and or very early February.
That's right. We want more content from Wormhole Space, and we want more content from Russian players, and we want more content from Chinese and soon Korean players, and we want more stories coming out of the role-playing community. We want all that for 2020.
Is there anything else you'd like for Christmas? Have you been good enough for all those?
No. But other people have. All right. That is going to do it for us today. But come back next week. Come for the midweek show and come back next week when we talk about some financial stuff with someone who's setting up markets all over the galaxy by himself. And we'll cover that, and we'll cover scamming too pretty soon. So you can get in on some of the high-end scams, how they're done, and who they're done by, which will surprise you.
How much do we have to pay to watch that?
Yeah, that one will be behind some kind of a paywall. All right, Elise, thanks very much. Is he still there?
No, I'm still here. Yeah, no, I'm excited as well. I'll be there.
All right, good. All right, we're gonna do what we always do. We're gonna jump into public Discord. If you want to help Talking in Stations, you can by giving us a subscribe or going to our Patreon /Matterall. Help us with some funding, or best thing we like is comments. Go to wherever you listen to your podcast and give us some stars and thumbs up. That allows other people to find this easier. And I also want to say, Talking in Stations Discord is a good place to get news all day long, every day about EVE Online. Once again, thanks to our engineer, McLeod, for helping us with images. And thanks to all of the Talking in Stations staff. That's all we have for this week. We will see you next time on Talking in Stations.
Bye, everybody.